Class 40 very much has a character to its own, which really does complement any BR Blue era layout. Hello to you, it's really great to see you. Welcome back to the channel here with me, Jenny Kirk, and today we've got the review of a model that I'm really pleased to finally see available again. Now today's model comes from Bachmann and it's the Class 40. I've really been eagerly awaiting these. They have been in the range before, of course, but for quite some time Bachmann have been concentrating on other great models coming through. But each model does get its time to shine again, and the Class 40 has been re-released in 3 different liveries: the plain BR green, the BR green with the yellow warning panels, and the BR tops blue. And also it should be said that TMC have also done a special commission, which is the rail blue but with a D number rather than the tops number. So if any of those interest you, we'll try and find some links for you to be able to find those, and we'll put them in the description box down below. Also, don't forget that today's sponsor is Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories. And we're going to be doing a DCC fitting guide towards the end of the video, so if you want to stay tuned for that, and I'll show you exactly how to fit your own DCC decoder in this model. But without further ado, let's take a look. Here is the model, the Bachmann Class 40, and we've got a catalogue number there, just show that up to you, 32-486, Class 40 diesel 4142 in BR blue, and as you can see it's 21 pin DCC decoder socketed. This is DCC ready, not DCC fitted. Now I should point out at this stage that Bachmann do appear to be doing a sound-fitted version of each of the models that they've released, whereas in the past they've often done a separate sound-fitted model, which can be a pain if that's what you're really after. With these, every identity is available on DC and DCC. So I'm going to slide this out here, and I should at this point as well point out that later on in the video we're going to be doing a DCC decoder fitting guide, and we recommend the use of the Train-O-Matic 21 pin decoder, which you can see here, and we've got a link to them down below, so just to help you out with these. These decoders also, you can fit one of their smart power packs, effectively a stay alive as well, if you want to go down that route. Although with the Bachmann Class 40, I tend to find that the stay alive is rather more of a belt and braces, because these are quite reliable runners straight out of the box. It's the pretty standard Bachmann packaging. I'm just going to get this out. And in the box, we'll show you these. We've got the product maintenance leaflet with the warranty. Bit of information there about the Collectors Club, and actually it's something that I'm quite keen on doing in a later video. I'm thinking about joining the Bachmann Collectors Club, the Hornbytts Collectors Club and the Dapol Collectors Club, and perhaps doing a review video of what you get for your money. But of course that's going to be a later video. We've also got the leaflet here, which is actually really useful because it tells you about the body removal and the DCC fitting guide, lubrication, and a little bit of information about if you're fitting this with a DCC decoder. So I'm going to be using this later on to pop the lid and DCC fit it. Now it should also be shown here, it tells you about the cab light and tail light switches. It's something that all of the Bachmann models are now coming with, so you can, especially on DC, turn those off. Say if the locomotive's in a train, you can turn off the tail lights because it'd only really show them if it was running light loco. There's also the exploded diagram there, which can be quite helpful if, for example, you need to get in and do any kind of heavy maintenance, maybe on the gear train, or indeed if something goes wrong. It does show you how everything is fitted together. I'm just going to put all those to one side, and let's get the model out here now. It does come with a little detail pack here. We've got some buffer beam detail and a couple of grills. I was quite intrigued to see these. They feel like they're etched metal. And actually in the instructions, if I can find the right one, it did give some information. Yeah, there. This is actually quite useful. You can see here, it tells you what goes where on the front buffer beam, but also I was quite intrigued by this. It actually tells you about the head code discs that you can fit this with, and gives you different head codes for different types of trains. I've never seen that before, and it's really useful information, because sometimes some of this, if you don't know it, then it can be quite difficult to find it out. So it's really great to see that they've put all of this information there for you if you're fitting the head code discs on the front, and that there of course does show you where they go. Right, I'm just going to pop this out. Although one thing I would say is I'm looking in there, I don't think all of the models are suitable for those. No, this has got the head code blind, so actually that's superfluous information for this model, but not to worry, it's just nice to see it there. Now I'm assuming that those grills fit over here. There's no mention of them in the actual leaflet that comes with this, so I will look that up, but it does look to me, in fact, let's just put that carefully down there, and quite often I leave the detail packs in place. Be careful when you do this, because you can actually bend and damage some of these parts if you're not careful. So let's just see. Yeah, I think these do go in there. Well, that is a nice effect. I'm not entirely clear why these are in the detail bag. Did these locomotives run at some point without the grills? I don't know. It does seem odd that these are left for the user to fit, because there's a lot of scope for that to go wrong. It's also the case that blue that is on these etchings doesn't appear to quite match the bodywork. That is quite interesting, and yeah. Is that the right way around, or does it go the other way around? I'm not convinced about that. If you look at that on the camera, to my naked eyes, the blue looks a lot greener on these grills. It sticks out like a sore thumb against the body side, whereas these grills, which are factory fitted, do look like they match. That's a peculiar one. I will look that up at some point, I think. I'll try and find some more information out about that. But the rest of the model, the blue finish is quite nice and satiny. One thing that my eye is drawn to is these works plates just here. They look like they've been painted over. I'm not convinced by them. You see what I mean? It looks like they've been tempo printed on and then oversprayed with a kind of washed out blue, and as you can see, just don't quite look right to me. It's like they've been overpainted. I'm not convinced by that effect, but I will bow down to my lack of knowledge. May well mean that that's how they looked on the real locomotives. One of the other things I can see here, I mean, I will point out that we're looking at this from an angle that you don't normally see the model at, but you can see in there some of the metal that's part of the pickups. And it does strike me that at the very least painting that black would have gone a long way to just disguise that. As you can see, I mean, this is very bright light, so it's probably a little bit unfair on it to say that that's a major detraction. But I do think that that could have been improved with some black paint. That's not that to say that you couldn't do that yourself. These bogeys, though, I really do like these. The Class 40 bogey has been done really, really well. Now, we reviewed some time ago, actually, the Hatton's Biohack snowplows that were made from redundant Class 40 bogeys. And I thought they were very exquisite, but it's nice to see that these bogeys do seem to capture a lot of that detail as well. So really nice effect there, and we've got some of the separately applied detail is already there. In fact, looking at the front, it's interesting. All of that pipe work is already there, and because the coupling is actually fixed to the bogey, it does actually work with all of that in there. So that is something that is really quite nice, and something that I guess other locomotives, you can't, because of the way that this all hangs on the bodywork, if you're using the coupling, you can't have this extra detail, but here you can, and I do like that. I also really like these head code blinds, where you can see they're not quite centered, and quite often you found this with locomotives, they would be slightly out of line, so that is a really great effect. These end nose doors as well, it's really quite sharp, and I do particularly like this grille there as well. It's possibly, because of the light, difficult for the camera to focus on those. But we've got the overhead warning flashes next to it, and just turning it round that way, you can see that actually quite a complex shape has been captured really, really well. Now, looking at the demarcation between the yellow and the blue, that does look pretty sharp. And the way it goes across the bonnet there, it could have been done badly, but it isn't. I do like that. Cab windows are flush glazed, really nice. And actually, the detail in that cab, a bit difficult to show you because of the light reflection. But there is a really nice cab in there, and there is a driver figure in that end. I'm just looking at the other end, and yeah, the other end, there is no driver figure. So that is actually, again, pretty nice that we do get effectively a crew. The rest of the windows on this are flush glazed. They look a bit thick on the doorway, you can see there, but not too bad. And we get metal handrails as well, which again, nicely done, and do seem to be pretty strong and robust. These grills do look nice, already drawn attention to them, but the addition of these left for the user to apply doesn't feel quite right to me, and the colour match is not quite there. So I really don't know what's going on with those. The rest of the roof detail is nicely done. And we've also got the fan in there. The grille is fitted on this, and I think, yeah, the fan does spin. Just about see it move there. It's very difficult to film and blow it at the same time. Exhaust ports, we've got some depth to them, really nicely done. And these side grills as well, they do look pretty reasonable. And the rest of the body shape, I think, has been captured pretty well. Now, on the chassis, we have got, see, 6-wheel drive to each bogie. And again, 6-wheel drive on that. The pickups actually are really nice. Instead of being wipers on the backs of the wheels, which can be prone to getting dirty, it actually picks up off what looks like a brass collar on the axle. And that does give some pretty prototypically good performance. The front bogies there, well, I said bogies, it's a bogie within a bogie. That does have a degree of sideways play, which helps this negotiate tight curves. The wheel faces are blackened. We've also got some other nice details, such as, I think that's a fuel gauge there, really nicely tempo printed. There is a little bit of, I think it's grease on my example. Yeah, it's just grease, and there. Is that glue? What is that? I appear to have, you can just see there, some kind of a mark. I can only assume that that is glue. Yeah, it's come straight off. It's just a little piece of glue, so nothing to worry about. In the centre, we've got the tail light and cab lights. They come by default switched on, but you can actually turn them off if you so choose. If you go down the DCC fitting route, then they can be controlled by the function keys, so I wouldn't really bother too much messing about with them. I'd actually leave them set to the on position. We've also got metal sanding pipes, and they are actually pretty robust. Speedo drive separately applied, really nicely done. Separately applied steps, and they are quite robust. Sometimes you find with these steps they can be very easy to break, but these are actually quite robust. Now, in terms of the rest of the printing, it is quite a simple livery, but what we've got is actually nicely done. The 40142, the TOPS data panel, is all really nice and crisp and clear. Overhead warning flashes, even the BR double arrow. Again, it looks like it's been painted out in the blue, and I can only conclude, because I know that Bachmann do their research, that that must be how this particular example was presented. It may well be that the works plates, being cast plates, had been overpainted with the blue, and that may well be the explanation for those. It does look odd in model form, but sometimes things that are prototypically accurate can look odd in model form. It's just one of those things. There's not really much else to say about this model. They were reasonably successful, but very quickly outpaced by technology. Their power plant was a development of the original LMS Twins' power plant from English Electric, and subsequently, even before the last of these were delivered, things had moved on, and they were somewhat overweight, as it were, so future locomotives could deliver the same sorts of amounts of power, but with much less weight. Now, that weight did mean that there was a bit of a sluggish response in acceleration on these, even though they had quite good power. They were reliable performers, and whilst the first of these locomotives was withdrawn in the 1970s, they did last through into the 1980s, giving sterling service. Now we come to the DCC fitting guide, and I'm going to be doing this, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, in association with our sponsor Train-O-Matic, and I recommend the Locomander 2 series fully featured DCC decoder. What we're going to need for this is my trusty set of jeweler's screwdrivers, and we're going to start out looking to the underside of the model. And actually, in the paperwork that came with it, you can see that it is listing 2 at the front, 2 at the back, and then we've also got 2 together and then 2 offset. So we will look out for that, but this is a handy guide just to help us get into the model. So I'm going to take the small crosshead screwdriver, and you can see some of these screw holes all the way down here. So I'm going to go ahead and just undo all of these. Just undo them until you can feel that they've reached the end of the thread. Again, you can just manually push the bogies from side to side to gain access to these screw holes. These are really well put together. Some locomotives only have a couple of screws, but this we've got 8. Let's try that one as well. What I tend to do, turn it over, give it a shake, and we should have 1, 2, 3, 5, and there's the last one. So we're just going to keep them safe there for now. And the top just appears to slide quite readily off. There's no cables attached to this. The head code lighting, as you can see there, is done through these bendy flexible phosphor bronze tags, the same with the cab lights, and this is really great because it means that there is no wiring to unplug between loco and chassis, unlike some of the earlier versions of the Class 37, which did struggle in that respect. There's also a couple of contacts there, and I can only assume that that's to do with fitting a speaker, and these allow the actual sound to be fed through to the speaker that you fit there because it's a 21-pin chip. I'm going to put that to one side. I'm going to look to the chassis, and as you can see, it's got the 21-pin decoder there in the middle. We've also got space here. Again, that looks to be a recess cut away underneath the fan just to give that extra level of space for sound decoder. Now, it is interesting that Hornbytts did do a TTS sound decoder for the Class 40. They're not currently at the time of recording available, but I do manage to have one in my collection, so I am going to investigate fitting that afterwards so that I have sound in this model. But for now, I'm going to show you the basic DCC decoder fitting. So we'll just gently rock from side to side. Don't just lever it all from one side because you will bend the pins. Lift that out, and then we're going to get the Trainomatic 21-pin decoder. Just try and get into this. There we go. And then what we're doing is on the decoder, you can just see on that end we have the one locating pin, and when we look at the chassis you can see the one pin missing, and those are what we're looking to line up. So we just put that over the pins. You'll feel it go down to the point where you can just rock it backwards and forwards, and you'll feel it push all the way home, and that's all that we need to do for the DCC fitting. It's now simply a case of reassembling the locomotive body over the top, making sure that that fan lines up with the recess here. And then it's simply a case of turning it over, reattaching all the screws, and we're ready to go. Putting it on the program track, the default identity will be number 3. We can then change that. But as I said before, the Trainomatic decoders generally don't need any of the other CV settings tweaking. So just reset the actual locomotive identity to whatever you want, and you are good to go. There was a Class 40 TTS sound decoder available from Hornbytts, and as you know, I am a huge advocate of the Hornbytts TTS sound decoders as offering amazing value for money. Now, that decoder I bought some time ago because I recognised that at some point I would get a Class 40. So what we can see here is it's been kept for safekeeping inside of a Bachmann Class 25. Now, one of the things you'll find, of course, the TTS sound decoder is an 8-pin decoder, but the Bachmann chassis for the diesels are 21-pin. You can get these 21 to 8-pin converters, and the chip will work just fine. Your problem comes that the 8-pin decoder socket with the actual chip plugged in becomes too tall to fit underneath the locomotive body. And that's where a little bit of careful soldering and cutting comes in. This is a 21 to 8-pin decoder adapter plate, and what I've done is I've used a sharp hacksaw to very carefully cut the 8-pin socket off the top to reduce its headroom. Now, when you do this, you have to be ever so careful. The reason for this is that if you nick the top of this board with that hacksaw blade, you can cut through the very thin copper tracks that are just underneath the blue coating. If you do that, it just won't work. Believe me, ask me how I know. I know because I've accidentally done that in the past, and it can be a little bit of an expensive mistake. These are about £4 to £4.50. But if you do it right, and a little practice, you can get it right each time. Take your time. You end up with the bottom of the pins as good solder contact points. You can then go ahead and solder on the wires cut from the plug of the TTS decoder to the appropriate positions, and hey presto, you have a Hornbytts TTS decoder that has been rejigged to fit inside a Bachmann diesel model with the 21-pin chassis. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take all this out. It's actually interesting that it's got the circular speaker, and I had thought it came with the oblong shaped one, but as it doesn't, I'm going to investigate whether it's possible to screw that speaker directly to the underside of this and still have enough space that it can fit neatly into here so we get a really good setup. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this across, and then we're going to put this on the test track and we're going to see how it sounds and how it performs. So I'm going to come back in a little bit and do that. On both DC and DCC, the running characteristics of this locomotive are sublime. Its haulage capacity is really good as well. I taxed it with what is actually a train longer than most people would probably run, and it handled it with ease, with no sign of slipping whatsoever. Running was very reliable through points, through junctions, and I had no problems at all with its track keeping abilities. And that takes us to the scores. First up is finish. And actually the rendition of the BR Rail Blue is pretty good. Again, the satin finish works really well. The extra detail where it is sharply done, in focus, including the tops number, the data panel. The demarcation between the yellow and the blue is sharp and crisp, and that white double arrow is really good. Below the frames, the black is nicely finished, looking slightly dirty, slightly oily out of the box because they've used that satin black. What I didn't like was the fact that you can see those phosphor bronze pickups, and I do think that they would have been improved by a little application of satin black to them just to mute them down. That said, it isn't massively noticeable when this is on the track. One of the other areas potentially for concern is that works plate that looks like it's been badly painted over. I'm going to give Bachmann a little bit of a pass on this and assume that they are working entirely off photographs of what the real locomotive looked like, but it just doesn't feel like it works particularly well in model form. And those user-applied side grills seem to be ever so slightly the wrong colour, and I can't quite fathom why they've left those as a user-fitted item. Perhaps this is for keeping costs down, or again, perhaps Bachmann are working from photos of specific locos that may have run with or without the outer grills. I'm not entirely sure on this area, but I do think that the model would perhaps have been improved if they'd have just fitted those out of the box. So for finish, I'm going to give this a 9.1 out of 10. When it came to functionality, then it was very much a top-notch model. It romped away with everything that I could throw at it. It handled curves, point work, and even gradients with comparative ease. The DCC lighting really does work well, and I like the fact that you've got those switches on the underside for tailoring cab lights and tail lights specific to your needs. So really, there wasn't anything that I could particularly fault, except perhaps it's a little bit difficult to get on the track. But really, is that Bachmann's fault? I don't really think it is, so I'm going to give this a 9.9. On ease of use, again, this locomotive scores really well. It's quite easy to get in and out of it. There might be 8 screws, but they certainly hold it well, and there's no fighting against hidden tabs, and that is something that I really do like a lot. When it comes to DCC fitting, again, as you would expect, it really is a doddle. And sound fitting, even if you're going to go the cheapskate route as I did, it's actually incredibly easy, to the point where the Hornby TTS circular speaker is a direct like-for-like plug-in fit underneath that speaker grill. And this massively improved the sound that I got out of this locomotive, even when comparing the same chip and same speaker in the Class 25 that it formerly resided for safekeeping in. So for ease of use, I'm going to give this a 9.9 out of 10. When it came to aesthetics, I thought that Bachmann have done a really good job with this. The basic tooling might date back a fair way, but actually there's some really nice touches going on here, and Bachmann have definitely upped the game on this model, perhaps looking to the fact that other manufacturers are starting to pick off some of what used to be their flagship models. I think they're quite keen to at least keep the Class 40 firmly in their range, and I think it would be a brave manufacturer that would try and retool to go head to head with this. There were other areas like the buffer beam detail factory fitted, which really do work well, and because of the design of the bogies on this model, it's something that you can keep in place and still use those slimline tension lock couplings. I did feel that those side grills just, for me, it would have been better if they'd have fitted those side grills out of the box. I'm guessing they had their reasons, but I think most modelers might agree that the model would look better with those grills in place. So I'm going to give this an 8.9 out of 10. When it came to value for money, I do feel that what is now a comparatively older model is quite expensive at the Bachmann RRP of around the £180 plus mark, and that's just for the basic model without even a DCC decoder in there. Again, when you went for sound, it did rise considerably, and this is an area where I have to say, with the Hornby TTS sound decoder on the market, and you have just heard that on the video, it really is questionable how Hornby managed to keep the price down on some of these sound chips, but other manufacturers do charge what seems to be a very, very high premium. There were other areas as well where I thought it just didn't quite warrant that expensive price. The tooling must be amortized by now, even notwithstanding the fact that the tooling has been improved. It shouldn't really keep this price going up and up well above inflation. However, it is also fair to say that these things aren't necessarily cheap to put together, and a lot of the time Bachmann has to be applauded for continuing to bring new models to the market, and in part some of these older models are helping to make that possible. We've got an affiliate link down below for Rails of Sheffield, which is where this particular example came from, bought with my own money, but certainly I felt that that was a good representative price of what is available out there at around the £160 mark. The Hornby TTS Class 40 sound decoders sadly are not currently available from Hornby. If you can find one in a lower volume, smaller independent model shop, then really it is certainly one for you to snap up, and I felt that it was one of the better Hornby TTS sound chips. It really does sound good, and with the design of placing that Bachmann have got on this, it really is a great package. So for value for money, I'm going to give this a 7.8 out of 10. That gives us a grand total of 45.6 out of 50 for this model. I'm really pleased to be able to add one to my collection, and I must say that the Class 40 very much has a character to its own, which really does complement any BR Blue era layout. With other versions available in BR Green and pre-tops BR Blue, there is certainly one of these for any particular period that you may choose to model, from the 1960s through to the preservation era. These locomotives are incredibly popular. Even now they have a steady following, with their nickname Whistler, which, as you may have heard from the sound on the TTS sound chip, is because of that very distinctive whistling noise that they make when in operation. I must admit, I did see a number of these at the East Lancs Railway Gala a couple of years ago, and that was the point, I think, where I thought, yes, I really must have one of these in my collection. And now, thank you, Bachmann, I finally do. I hope this video has been really informative to you. Don't forget to tickle that like button. It's the best way to show your support for the channel, along with sharing this video too. Really important, letting other people know about the videos that we're putting out. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Do put a comment down below and let me know about which model you are really looking forward to, and also make some suggestions about future models that we could look out for and review on this channel. But thanks again for watching. Now you take really great care of yourself, and I hope to see you back here again. And this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Trishbits, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, and Chris Moss. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.